So, welcome to LiberalViewer First Wednesday live Q&A. This is the live show I do on the first Wednesday of every month at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time, where I answer questions on any topic from viewers. So if you're watching now live, you can post questions you have in the comment section, and hopefully I'll get your comment in just a few minutes. But first, I always like to start with the questions people have posted before the show started, and people post them on my channel page over the course of the month between shows, or on my Facebook page, facebook.com/liberalviewer, or twitter.com/liberalviewer. And the first question I got came from Susan Clark over on my Facebook page earlier today. Or this wasn't the first question, but this is the order I decided to take them in. Here is the first question. And hold on just a second. I have to make sure everything here is going according to plan. Get all the comments going. Okay. So yeah, here you can see Susan Clark's question. Will be there with both. My question is, why do the opinion shows keep talking about Ted Cruz as if he is positioning himself to run for president? Wasn't he born in Canada? Why are they wasting any time talking about what he does versus, say, what Rand Paul does? I've seen it elsewhere, but I'm mainly talking about Morning Joe, where no mention is ever made that this person is definitely not running for president now or ever. I've actually covered the question of whether Senator Ted Cruz is eligible to run for president. I think I don't remember which show, but on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, that issue came up because he is going to be the candidate possibly of the same birthers who said President Obama could not be president because supposedly he was born in Kenya. But if you look at the actual Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution here, what that clause or that section says is, no person except a natural-born citizen or citizens of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. So you have to be a natural-born citizen, and what that means is actually open to interpretation. It definitely applies to American citizens born in the United States, right? People born in the United States automatically become American citizens. But it may also apply to people born to American parents outside of the United States. This actually came up, John McCain, when he ran for president, he was not born in the United States. He was born in Panama, I believe. It had something to do with military base. But there is a statute, and I'm going to show you. This is from, used to be Section 301 of the Immigration Naturalization Act. I think now it's Section 1401, and I didn't have time to put links to all this in the video description, but I will after. This is a recorded show. When enacted in 1952, Section 301 required a U.S. citizen married to an alien to have been physically present in the United States for 10 years, including 5 after reaching the age of 14, to transmit citizenship to foreign-born children. So Ted Cruz was born in Canada, but his mother was a U.S. citizen, I think born in Wilmington, Delaware. So assuming she spent 5 years in the United States after the age of 14, and I think she went to Rice University, so she probably did, that means that Ted Cruz was a U.S. citizen at birth. And most legal scholars think that that means that he's a natural-born citizen for purposes of running for the U.S. presidency. Of course, if you think about it, that also means Barack Obama, even if he had been born in Kenya, his mother was an American citizen who lived in the United States for 5 years after the age of 14. So even if Barack Obama had been born in Kenya, which of course he wasn't, he still would have been eligible to run for president. And the way this is going to all turn out possibly is that if Ted Cruz runs for president, and it is looking like he's running for president because it's a great way for him to fundraise, even if he can't really win even the Republican nomination. But he's going to appeal to the same wing of the party that had all the birthers in it. And so they're going to have to totally change their point of view on this whole natural-born citizenship between one election and the next. It's like, we're not at war with Eurasia anymore. We're at war with East Asia now. Or I don't know. Anyway, so I hope that answers the question from Susan Clark there. let me just check and see how. Oh, I see that people are being able to see and hear me. I'm hoping. Right. Let me look at the little analytics here and see. Yeah, I've got a couple dozen people watching, so I'm going to go on to the next question. I really appreciate when people ask questions before the show starts because it gives me a chance to do a little research and then I can give a better answer, I think. The second question I'm going to take is from Terry Alther, who seems to have a question just about every month. Here's the question from Terry Alther. Question for Wednesday. As you may have heard, Mr. Newkirk was arrested for interrupting oral arguments for McCutcheon versus FEC, which on a side note was taped and has gone viral. It also has the no cameras in the court policy in question. It seems that opposition to Citizens United is growing thanks to 99 Rise and Wolfpack. With the chilly reception of the incident from, for instance, the Young Turks and Occupy, I'm wondering how sustainable Citizens United versus FEC is. While I agree that the 60-day ban was ridiculous and corporations do have some rights, the decision has done more harm than good in my opinion. If the court doesn't address the problem of money in politics soon or overhaul the decision, Citizens United and corporate rights like Marxist-Leninism will end up in the ash heap of history. And then, in case you got lost in the explanation, my question is, how sustainable is Citizens United? Well, first there was one error actually in that question. The guy who interrupted the Supreme Court, they did some surreptitious videotaping of the McCutcheon case, but they actually interrupted a separate case. I can't remember which case it was, but it was like a patent case. So they didn't actually interrupt the Citizens or the McCutcheon case, which is a campaign finance case that supposedly is going to extend Citizens United. I talked about it in a previous video, and it's kind of long and complicated, but instead of it, what it does is it attacks these caps that are put on donors for the total amount they can give to all congressional candidates. So even though they follow the individual caps, which I can't remember, it used to be like $2,300 in the primary and $2,300 in the general, so you could give like a total of $4,600 to an individual candidate. But it also says like you can't give more than $100,000 to all candidates, and I'm just making up that 100,000 number, but it's something like that. And the argument is that if it's not corrupting to give 26 or 2,300 or 4,600 to one candidate, then why is it corrupting to give it to 50 candidates? And anyway, so it is kind of an interesting case, and I don't think it really is like the whole Citizens United thing. But I'm going to show you a 20-second clip of the guy who surreptitiously videotaped the Supreme Court, or at least his friend did, and he stood up and during this patent case and protested the Citizens United ruling. Here's like 20 seconds of that video.
I rise on behalf of the vast majority of the American people who believe that money is not speech, corporations are not people, and our democracy should not be for sale to the highest bidder. Overturn Citizens United. Keep the capital reduction. People demand democracy.
I guess that was kind of loud there at the end, but anyway, I guess he's protesting Citizens United there. Is my microphone just a little bit loud? Turn it down just a little bit. So I've made a lot of videos on the whole campaign finance issue. In fact, here's a picture of the playlist. When this is a recorded show, I'll put a link so that people can click on it and actually go to that playlist. But if you just go to my channel, youtube.com/LiberalViewer, and click on playlists or scroll down, I think this is one of the ones that's featured. So you can see my views on campaign finance. Regarding Terry Alther's question about whether Citizens United is sustainable, there's really the only way to overturn, there are two ways to overturn Citizens United. One is through a constitutional amendment, which is a really long process, either, or constitutional convention, which has never been done, which is even worse. And there are a lot of forces that would stand in the way of that, and it requires all these states. And I think it's, even if I agreed with the goal, I don't necessarily think that I would agree that it was a achievable goal. So if you're asking whether Citizens United is sustainable, you also have to ask, is it sustainable to overturn it, or is it possible to even overturn it? Because if you aren't going to do it by constitutional amendment, the other way to overturn it is by getting new Supreme Court justices who have different views on the First Amendment and how constitutional it is to put restrictions on the amount of money that individuals and corporations can spend to further their political beliefs. And I mean, the whole thing, money equals speech. I talked, and that's in one of my videos. That's on that list. There is money equals speech ? And I discussed this in detail. There is a lot of First Amendment need for First Amendment protection for things that people spend money on in politics. It's kind of simplistic to say money equals speech, but if you think about how if government can regulate how you spend money on your political campaign, it does impact your ability to exercise your First Amendment rights. So I disagree with what that protester was saying just on that part there, but I also think that people concentrate on the wrong villain when they talk about corporations. Even if corporations didn't exist, rich people would still have too much power in our political system. You don't need corporations for that, and a lot of these huge donations going to these super PACs aren't even coming from corporations, like the Adelson money and that kept Newt Gingrich alive for so long and then went to Mitt Romney. I'm pretty sure a lot of that money was like his personal money, and so it's, these rich people are going to be able to spend their money to try to get their political goals enacted, whatever it is that you do to corporations. So I think that's kind of a red herring. I think what you need is to have public financing of political campaigns, and especially free broadcast time, which even in the age of the internet is one of the most expensive things for campaigns to have to buy. And I think that's also a much more achievable goal than a constitutional amendment. And I don't know if people will eventually get behind that, but there are the same people who are pushing for the constitutional amendment also want public financing, and I think there are more people who are in favor of that, and it's a more achievable goal, and so hopefully that's where that movement's going to go. But I don't know if that is enough of an answer, but I guess Terry Alther likes me talking about campaign finance every month, and so I've spent a little more time talking about campaign finance, and I am planning on making another campaign finance video sometime before the McCutcheon decision comes out, which should probably be in June, might be in May, but I would guess most likely the McCutcheon decision will come out in June sometime. So I have a couple more questions that people asked. Let me just make sure everything's going okay on my stream health. Good. We've got about 30 something people watching, so that's good. So the next question, this was a guy also asked me about a creationism question last week. Joel James says, "Why do you love science when variables are based on change and change cannot be trusted? So surely you cannot trust that which is based on which cannot be trusted, which invariably applies to science too, ? And further, when science requires more than one of which cannot be without, particularly historical science like evolutionism, which is best highly unlikely by the most generous estimates, then surely we must abandon science, thus leading to the undeniable conclusion that your love of science is ironically irrational." Well, that question was not very well formed, and there's some fallacies somewhere in the middle of it, like the historical science like evolutionism. I heard Ken Ham trying to say that there's a difference between science of what's happening in the present and science about what happened in the past, and that really never really made much sense to me, because the present is always turning into the past. Like, there it goes, oh, present just turned into the past. Does that mean that scientific laws no longer apply, or that you can't draw conclusions based on what happened in the past about what's going to happen in the present? And that whole thing about science being irrational, that is the total opposite. That's like an oxymoron. It's or contradiction. It's because science is by definition rational. It is a rational method. It's using reason to draw conclusions based on the evidence. And the variability, I don't know, because when you get new evidence, you change your conclusions. That is that the variability? I don't know, but I think even the person, someone already posted a reply, Gary Leventhal, where the fact that science recognizes the importance of change is its strongest attribute. And that's true. That's how you know that what you're believing in is true, not through trust or faith, but through skepticism, that you're always testing it. You're always making sure that the rationality, the reason you used is valid, that it's accurate, and you're always open to testing it again. It's not trust at all. All those words were misused in the question. So once again, the question is filled with fallacies, not very well formed, and it falls apart on examination without even really having to answer it. That's my position. You tell me if that was a persuasive analysis. I think it was. Anyway, last question that someone actually posted in the comment section before I started the show. Pat's Rule 213 asked, what would LiberalViewer do about our military bases overseas? And I think Pat's still watching, because I wasn't exactly sure. That's a kind of a general question. I mean, I do think that we have way too many troops stationed in military bases all around the world, and it's costing us money that we don't have, and it's not really getting us any value, and in some ways it's causing animosity, and I don't know if it's upholding our economic interests or the economic interests of our multinational corporations, or I haven't really analyzed our military bases, and I mean all of them, and what good they do and what purpose they're serving. But I mean, if I were to do something about our military bases, that's what it would be. I would undertake a review of each and every one of them and try to figure out if they were actually promoting stability in any way. I mean, do we really need them? And I mean, I guess with what's going on in the Ukraine, all of a sudden you could say we do need our troops in Germany and Europe, but not so much, because we're not going to use them for any of those purposes. I mean, I do see the United States does occasionally do some good things with logistical support, because it's the only country that has sort of a global reach, and even for disaster relief, there are times when the American military can get places before just about anybody else, and there are a few good things, but it doesn't justify all those bases. So that would be my answer as best I can to the one question posted in the comment section. I saw a bunch of other comments posted about the time I use to start my show, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, and whether I should refer to Pacific time or if that was like too provincial, or but the thing is, that's where I am, and that's the time that I know. And if I were to do it like by Greenwich time, it wouldn't be the same time. You know, during daylight savings and stuff, it would switch around, and it wouldn't be at 4:30 every first Wednesday, and it wouldn't be at 6:30. My LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup is 6:30 p.m. Pacific every Sunday, and that would switch around for me, and it would like mess me up. So I need to do it, you know, on my local time. Although I think the person who posted those comments has actually deleted them. Yeah, comment removed, author withheld, comment removed. So let's see. I'm going to scroll through a few more comments here. I see I've been broadcasting for, about 23 minutes, so I'm going to go at least another 5 minutes. I don't really like to listen to myself talk for more than about 30 minutes at a time with no clips to play, and but I do appreciate those of you who have shown up to watch the show live. I see I've got about 30 people, and I want to reward those who showed up to post the live comments to give me something to talk about. So let me scroll through here real quick. Before I get to those, I also want to say that I do have 2 upcoming edited, produced videos I'm making. One is going to be titled, I think, Fox News blames Obama for Russians in the Ukraine, Russian troops in Ukraine, and it's gonna be some clips I've already shown on LiberalViewer Sunday of Fox News like blaming Obama for what happened, and then some new clips, and that will hopefully be up by tomorrow evening sometime. And then I have another video I've been working on, a local issue. It's kind of long and complicated, but about the Trust Act and the enforcement of immigration law in California, and whether undocumented immigrants should be arrested for, or should be held by local law enforcement for federal immigration authorities. Anyway, it's long and complicated, but that'll be the next video, and hopefully it will make sense when I make it. But here's a question posted in the comment section from Chicken Bone Genome. Says, in your opinion, do we help the Ukraine protesters with their demands, or do we follow the rule of constitutional law and election procedures? I'm not sure I understand that question, just because... Sorry, I got to do a quick little Marco Rubio. Because, I mean, I'm not a constitutional law expert on the Ukrainian constitution. I don't know if this is... talking about the fact that the elected president of the Ukraine, Yanukovych, fled, and but from what I understand, he was like impeached by the parliament, and they appointed someone new, and they're going to hold regular elections in May. So I don't know whether what happened, the impeachment of Yanukovych, if that was constitutional or not constitutional, but that's pretty much an internal political matter of the Ukraine, and especially if they're holding free elections in May, that seems like a better solution to the problem than sending in Russian troops. And I'm not sure I understand if there is a conflict between what the demands of the Ukraine protesters and constitutional law and election procedure, but I guess we'll see. Wait. Chicken Bone Refund rephrased it. Do we help the Ukraine protesters with their demands, or do we allow the rule of constitutional law and election procedure to take precedence? Well, it's still kind of the same question, and I think I just answered as best I can. ACRH22 question. Maidan Sniper, Maidan, I don't know that word, hired by Yanukovych or the opposition? Oh, you mean the snipers in the square. Well, I mean, the way it was reported, it was the pro Yanukovych people who shot the protesters in the square. But I mean, if you're saying that everything may not be what it seems, I grant you that. But that's at least what I saw reported in the corporate media here in the United States, and I'd be happy to look at other sources if anyone wants to send them to me, but I'm not claiming to know the truth about that for sure, but I'm just going based on what I see in my media, which I know is flawed. Let's see. Gabor Cosper says, I mean, even if I'm the most loyal U.S. citizen, if I became only at 1 year old, I can't run for president. That's true. If you're not a natural-born U.S. citizen, even if you become a citizen, just when you're a baby, you still are not eligible to be president. Arnold Schwarzenegger, governor of California, though he's kind of more in disgrace these days, but he's not eligible to run for president. And what's her name? The Democratic governor of Michigan was a Canadian, who was a big Democratic star, and I'm like blanking on her name. I don't know. Can anyone know the name of the former governor of Michigan who's Canadian? Wants to post it of the 30 people who are watching. But let me see. Someone said is my thing freezing? I hope it's not freezing. It's just like redoing it here. Now it looks like my show is still going, at least as far as I can tell. I'm gonna scroll here through the comments, try to see if I can get a couple more. Pat's Rules 213 says they need to overturn Citizens United with the constitutional amendment. Well, I don't think that's very likely, and I don't even think I'd favor it, because it would change a lot of constitutional law that I happen to agree with about the government being unable to stop groups of people from speaking just because they're incorporated, they're non-profit corporate. I mean, it depends on how you write the amendment. I can never get anyone to nail down the exact language, and anytime I do see exact language, it's heavily flawed and would have really negative excuse me, implications for important First Amendment rights that and I don't know. Like I said, I'm planning on making another video about this around the time the McCutcheon decision comes out in the Supreme Court, so I'll discuss it in more detail then. Let me see. Money is speech, LE also. LV says pass roll. There's a lot of saying. Oh, let's see. Hans Blitz says an individual's vote is impotent in comparison to the lobbying efforts of another individual, let alone a super PAC. Well, that's true. Your ability to vote is one of your least powerful First Amendment rights. Your ability to lobby, to write letters, to organize, to do a lot of other things give you a lot more power than voting. But one of the reasons the vote is so important is because it splits up power into the most number of pieces, pretty much. I mean, I guess if you didn't require citizenship, if it was just residency, it would be even more pieces. But that's why voting was put into the Constitution, not because the framers of the Constitution were big believers in democracy, or that democratic elections always had the right result. They were actually kind of suspicious of democracies, but they were more suspicious of concentrated power and at least splitting up the power to control the government into as many smaller pieces as possible through the vote. Makes it harder to gather it up and in corrupting ways. Now, the people who have a lot of money, they sort of get to pick who gets voted for in the democratic election. That I can't remember what the name was that Lawrence Lessig used in his big talk about it, but it's like, was it Lester or something? I think it was Lester, but if everyone who had to run for office first had to run in a primary where people only named Lester could vote, all of the policies that were enacted by our politicians in Washington would subtly shift in favor of people named Lester. But the thing is, even if people named Lester or people who are rich get to vote in a primary as to who goes into the general election, they call it the money primary for the rich people, that still doesn't mean that the next election where everybody gets to vote, and not that everybody does, but in that next election, that is still an important barrier to people getting into office. It still makes a difference. Even though the money election has a big influence, the vote election also has a big influence. Now, any individual vote isn't very powerful, and like I said, it is the least powerful way that we affect our elected officials, but it still is an important limit on the power of our government, that the people who get into office have to pass through that general election stage, even if they also have to pass through the money primary or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, I guess I'm kind of starting to ramble on that. I don't know why I talk about campaign finance so much, but Keith H. says, LV, what about the UN troops and resources? Well, I mean, the UN does have a lot of resources. That's as opposed to U.S. military bases, but the UN doesn't have a lot of the logistics that, the ability to refuel aircraft flying all around the world and move large amounts of supplies. And I mean, the UN does have some of that capacity, but I think the U.S. military has even more capacity, especially with the global reach of its air power. And I don't know, I could be wrong about that. I studied military history when I was in college, but that was quite a long time ago. I try to keep current, but I can't say I recently read a comparison of the resources of the United Nations in terms of airlift power versus the resources of the United States military, but my guess would be the United States military has more airlift capacity than the United Nations, but that would be an interesting thing to look into, I guess. So I guess I've also been broadcasting for well over half an hour, and I'm starting to tire out a little bit. But I appreciate all of you who showed up for the live show. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. You enjoyed my answering your questions. I will do this every Wednesday. I don't mind. It actually looks like we got up to about 40 people, so I don't mind talking to a group of 40 people about issues that are important to you, and anything where I can add any information I have from my legal training or my other informational background or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, I hope you'll look for my videos coming up this week. As I said, hopefully by tomorrow night I'll have Fox News blames Obama for Russian troops in Ukraine. And then later in the next week I should have a video up. I think it's going to be called Local News Lets Sheriff Get Away with Breaking Law. So look for those, and thanks again for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you all around the internet.